Today I will be reviewing this crucifix and discussing its various features. There are not many details available about the sculpture, as is typical of many of these Filipino ivories. I've tried to describe its story in as much detail as possible. The title is also unknown, but many of them are simply titled Christ Crucified. The artist is also unknown. I will discuss the theological and artistic meanings that can be seen within the image and its general features and its origin also. The crucifix was made in the Philippines during the Spanish colonial period, somewhere between the 17th and 19th centuries. These Filipino artisans would have been trained by Chinese craftsmen, mostly in Manila. The ivory could have came from India, Thailand, or possibly Africa. The tusk used is a very large one, and we can see that his body is formed in its shape. The arms have been carved separately and then added. It is currently located in Spain. I'm not sure how it came to be there or which year it was sent, but we know of the colonial trade through these centuries, where these ivories came through Mexico. I could not guess when it was sent here or when exactly it was made. So we begin with the eyes of Jesus. His eyes are firmly fixed toward heaven. He is gazing directly at the Father, to whom he voices the solemn words of Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? This was a cry of anguish from Jesus' heart. So his gaze is actually directed away from the viewer of the sculpture, and it's not so easy to see them, especially if it was mounted high. I think this invites the viewer to also gaze toward heaven in their own way. To note further on Psalm 22, it has long been commented among scholars that the words said from Psalm 22 do not have the meaning of God having forsaken his Son on the cross. These words from Jesus must be read in the whole context of the psalm. Using verse 24, we can see that the meaning is completely changed. For he has not despised or scorned the suffering of the afflicted one. He has not hidden his face from him, but has listened to his cry for help. And also verse 31, they will proclaim his righteousness, declaring to a people yet unborn, he has done it. This psalm begins with the image of forsakenness, but ends with the image of our salvation. So too, in this crucifix do we see these motifs. We do see Jesus on the cross, but in his posture, he also seems to have already risen or is ascending. He appears to be alive and is not crippled by his injuries, nor grievously wounded. I think this crucifix shows the necessary relationship between these two states of suffering and salvation. His expression also appears to be very neutral and calm. This is quite typical of Filipino ivories and can seem to show us the quiet suffering of the colonized people taken on by Jesus. We can also notice the marks along the body. These are likely due to the natural state of the ivory tusk used, but I think they could be seen as a less violent representation of his wounds from the scourging. They are also vertical, which contribute to the direction of the sculpture toward heaven. To note finally, the colour, like all of these Filipino ivories, is white. It's not specific to the sculpture, but it can represent the purity of Christ and does have quite a shiny patina which reflects the light quite well. To sum up, finally, I think this crucifix represents the victory of salvation that Christ has won for us by his suffering on the cross.